Welcome, everyone, to today's Town of Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is July 13th, 2023. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 2023, signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the ZBA is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410. Then you have to put in the conference ID number, which is 279-143-508, then hit the pound sign. Or you can join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue, hearing, or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. To authorize this form of hybrid meeting, I will ask for a vote of all the members of the board. Please state your name and whether you approve it or not. We'll start with Ginny.
Virginia Fenwick, I approve.
Lee Hovey, I approve.
David S. Nixon, I approve.
Randy Potash, I approve.
David H. Veach, I approve.
Okay. Before I go into describe the meeting, there's two things we want to do. Number one, since Buck retired at our last meeting, we need to elect a clerk. And the criteria for a clerk has to be a regular member of the board. And the voting is simple majority, not super majority. And I think we have a nomination from the nomination committee chair, Mr. Veach.
Yes, the nominating committee voted unanimously to nominate Randy Potash as the clerk of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Well, thank you. Then we should, are there any other candidates? What happened to Paul?
Paul had to step out for just a moment, but before he left, he said he votes yes.
We're witnesses.
Okay, so no other nominations? Randy, you want to nominate Mr. Veach, or are you happy with this position?
I am of the understanding that Mr. Veach does not want to take that role. If I thought for a second that he did, I absolutely would.
I felt it was an experience that I wanted you to have.
Okay, so let's have a vote. And like I said, it's a simple majority. The only other thing we do with simple majority is 40Bs, and we haven't had one of those in a long time. But anyway, so would you
David, we do need a second.
make the motion? I'll second it.
So I would move to elect Randy Potash as clerk of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
And I'll second that. Then we need a vote. How do you vote, Mr. Veach?
Veach votes yes.
Randy?
Thank you. Sure.
Yes? I vote yes. And Paul?
All votes yes.
All right, well, that's a unanimous decision, and thank you all very much. We next have some, Sarah had wanted me to include the two of you, and it's not quite correct, but I would be happy to. How do you two vote?
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
All right, so there you go. It's a double supermajority or whatever we voted on. Okay. We'll have to discuss that, Sarah, so let's see how we end up. Okay, Paul, do we have minutes?
We have minutes from June 8th, which have been reviewed, and I would move to approve the minutes as published.
Dave Veach seconds.
Okay, voting today is Lee. So, Lee?
I approve.
Paul approves.
I approve.
Approve.
Dave Veach approves.
Okay, so there we go. I'm not going to go through the procedural steps because I think the two gentlemen that are here, in addition to us, know the deal, so I'm going to skip that entirely, unless you'd like me to go through it. I didn't think so. Okay, very good. Okay, Sarah, let's start with 23-031, please.
Application number 23-031, Philip and Lori Dumas, care of William F. Riley Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 67 Palmer Drive, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15G, Block 37, Lot P7. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and the construction of a new dwelling. The existing dwelling is non-conforming, and it is located 12.6 feet from the westerly abutter and 22.2 feet from the southerly abutter. The proposed dwelling will be non-conforming, and that it will be located 8 feet from the westerly abutter and 17 feet from the southerly abutter, where a 25-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 888 square feet, 8.9%, and the proposed building coverage is 1,485 square feet, 14.8%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming, and that it contains 10,004 square feet, where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Protective Bylaw. This was continued from May 4th and June 8th, 2023.
Good afternoon, Bill Riley on behalf of Phil and Lori Dumas. I think Phil, anyway, is participating remotely. This is a situation where we'd previously presented this design, and unhappily, the board members voting at that time didn't like it. So we thought what we'd do is we'd dress up our presentation a little bit and review the issues again in the hopes that you would be able to support it at this time. What I'd like to do is, Sarah, you have the colored images that Rick sent to you. Okay, if we could have those on the screen.
It's 77.
No, the colored ones.
The video?
Yeah, the video. Now, while you watch the video, I'd like to have in mind the fact that the building next door, which is 77, has 2,486 square feet according to the assessor's map. And our building, as proposed, is 2,390 square feet. And for some reason, the members, when we discussed it at the last meeting, felt that our proposal, the Dumas' proposal, was out of scale with the neighborhood. And and so if you think of the neighborhood, this road is sort of the back end of Palmer Drive, and there are 4 buildings along that side. There's the Dumas house, which, as you recall from visiting the site, is 870 square feet, small ranch. The DeLeo Amalfa property, which is 77, and as I indicated, that it's about the same size as we're proposing here today. That was renovated and reconstructed back in 2016, approved by this board, virtually identical in size, floor area. Neither property has a garage. So, and then on the outboard ends of this rear section of Palmer Drive, the 89, which is the one to the far right, has 3,826 square feet, also not including a two-car garage, which has always been a mystery to me. And also 59, which is on the left-hand side of this part of the street, which has 3,107 square feet, also not including a two-car garage. So in terms of the mass of the structure, because this property and the DeLeo property don't have garages, the mass is considerably less than the structures on either side. So we think that it really does fit in the character of the neighborhood, both design-wise and size-wise. Now, Mr. Roy, who's standing next to me, he's not actually huffing and puffing. Internally, he's huffing and puffing because he would like to address you as well.
Thank you, Bill. So one of the things that I did, Sarah, if you can bring up the other things that I sent to you today, is that this is 77, which is next door, and it does not have a garage on it. There's a garage under, so on one side, it's actually 3 stories tall. But what I wanted to do, because I felt that at the last meeting, we weren't probably prepared enough to address the idea of the size of it as it compares to the neighboring houses. What I did was I took the Leo plan and I just overlaid our plan. So you can see that as it presents to the street, it doesn't look as wide, because what you see on the bottom of the page is actually the part that is at the street. If you go back one slide, Sarah, okay, all of this faces the street, so this end of it, okay, actually is longer than what we have, and it's basically on the same size lot. The two lots are the same size. So the idea is, all right, is that I felt that what I needed to do is I needed to be able to get it so that we could make a good comparison as to the size of things, so that, it would be more scientific than it was the last time we did it, right? So, believe it or not, if we can go back to the one we had before, so the other thing is that this house, all right, because it does not have an existing structure within the setback, or the old setback, up to the old setback, which is 25 feet back from the street. This house is 40 feet back from the street. So if you have the two houses sitting side by side, one that's at the 25-foot setback and one that's more than 45 feet away from the street, and not only that, but the road is actually another 10 feet away from the property line, so we're really 50 feet away from the street. You're really tucking this thing far enough back from the street that the scale of the project even gets smaller at that point. But just as a point of reference, okay, that front section that has the porch on it would fit from David Veach to me. It's 26 feet across here, and that's what the front section of that house is, just to give you an idea of size, okay? So many times, okay, when we draw plans for people and people are looking at a two-dimensional plan, the plans always look a little bit bigger, okay, when you're looking at it on a piece of paper, than what it actually looks like when it's built and it's in a 3D form on the site. And all I wanted to be able to do was to get it so that you could make that comparison with the sizes. And the other thing is that with all the things that have happened with zoning board of appeals and measuring from corner boards and making sure that everything is the right size, all right, when this thing is given to Wendy now down at the engineering office, I literally draw lines around the thing representing those dimensions to make sure that when I come before the zoning board of appeals, I don't have to come back because I didn't figure in the corner boards. But the other thing that happens is that I make sure that I meet the town's bylaws. That the only thing that I can ask for forgiveness for, all right, is the fact that we have an encroachment into a setback. As it pertains to the mass, which is the height, we have to meet a height calculation of 30 feet from the average grade plane, which we do, by 3 feet. We could be 3 feet taller, okay? And we're under the 15%, okay, of what's allowed to be put on that lot. So, you know, my thing is, okay, is that I just felt that in the last meeting, the only thing that got away from us, all right, was just simply the fact that people were thinking the building was much bigger than what it really was, all right? And so I hope that these things have helped bring some of those things back into line.
So I'll just run through the criteria briefly. And I think it's important to keep in mind that, as Rick just mentioned, but for a second floor deck that encroaches a couple of feet into the rear setback, the property meets all the requirements of our dimensional requirements of our zoning bylaw. So the applicant seeks to remove the existing 870 square foot house and replace it with a new house will have a total of 2,390 square feet. The lot contains 10,004 square feet. The proposed house is 40 feet from the street line and will be 15 feet from the rear abutter setback, as I say, but for this overhanging deck on the second floor. The applicants believe the site is adequate for the proposal because the building's no closer than the previous building. In fact, the previous building was only 12.6 feet from the rear property line. But also because the property behind the proposed location of the house is open space for an adjacent home. If you had the assessor's map for this area, you would see that the area behind our locus is actually the open space for 59, the house, 59. So the open space, the undeveloped space behind the house is actually just part of the yard of 59. It doesn't really directly affect the siting of that house. So the compatibility of the size of the proposed structure, so if the wrong map here. So our proposed structure, as proposed today, is a floor area of 2,390 square feet. Now, that's not the gross floor area because we're not including the basement, but that's, you know, the first and second floors. The DeLeo Malfa house, which is to the right, 77, is 2,486 square feet. So we're virtually identical in size. The houses on either side, you know, 59 is 3683, 89 is 3823. The property directly across the street, 54 is 2,184 square feet. 74 is 2,180 square feet. And those are net areas, so they do not include the garage. So both of those houses have two-car garages. So the 86, which is on the next corner, including the garage, is 1,848 square feet. So in terms of how does it fit into the neighborhood? Size-wise, we believe it fits in very well with the neighborhood. So I think you could find that it's compatible. The extent of the proposed increase in non-conforming nature, the although the proposed structure does not meet the sideline setback on the left-hand side, that's the only increase in the non-conforming nature, besides the increase in the living area. Suitability of the site, the property is very level, and there are no wetlands in the neighborhood. So we think that suitability of the site, which really relates to how will construction affect the neighboring properties, we think that there'll be no negative impact on the neighboring properties. Impact of scale, sighting, and mass on the neighborhood visual character, including views, vistas, and streetscapes. So we don't have any views or vistas, but the streetscape, of course, is very important. And again, we think the design of this structure, which is similar in many ways to the Malfa DeLeo house to the right, and other houses in the neighborhood have similar types of design. Basically, we have a gambrel front. Other houses have a more Cape Cod style. But these are, DeLeo and Malfa also has a gambrel front. So, we think in terms of how does it fit in the neighborhood, what's the impact on the streetscape? Because the building's 40 feet back from the street line and is, 3 feet below the maximum height, right?
Right.
3 feet below the maximum height of the building. So the siding and the mass of the structure in relationship to the streetscape, really, it remains a very modest structure. So, the lot coverage is, building coverage, we call it, right? 1,485 square feet. By any standard, a modest building coverage. So we think that as to the impact of scale, sighting, and mass on the neighborhood, that this proposal is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing structure. And we'd ask you to find that. Compatibility with proposed use with neighboring uses, so it's a single-family residence, and it's going to remain that way. Method of sewage disposal, source of water and drainage. We are constructing a new septic system, but source of water and drainage remain the same. We don't believe there'll be any impact on traffic flow and safety or noise and litter. Utilities are clearly adequate, and 11 and 12 really aren't applicable. So that would be our presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
I'd like to add one more thing too.
Sure.
That we didn't, when you're talking about the impact on the neighborhood, we did receive, all favorable reports from the neighbors. I don't think, maybe that's changed, maybe somebody else has written something in, but, we did go around and query everybody that lives around this property to show them what we were doing, and they were all in favor of it, so, that's something that we didn't bring up because that was a month and a half ago or whatever, but anyways, just thought that's important.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would ask if anybody here in the audience or on Microsoft Teams wishes to speak in favor of this application, please indicate you'd like to join the conversation.
I see no one to speak in favor.
And I don't see that there's any new correspondence.
No new correspondence.
Okay, is there anyone here today or on Microsoft that would like to speak against this application or has a specific question? If so, please indicate you'd like to join the conversation.
There's no one to speak in opposition or that has a question.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before we go on, I think it might be helpful for you to review the correspondence that was previously sent in. I don't know that the board members have your a steel trap-like memory that would remember every syllable.
The first was an email from Christine McCarthy, and she is the collections assistant for the town of Chatham. At the time, she wrote that there were outstanding 2023 real estate taxes. And that's essentially what that was about. Then we had an email from Judith Georgia, health agent for the town. She said on May 2nd, a review of the plan to demo and rebuild. Proposal was approved by the BOH for a 3-bedroom deed-restricted dwelling with an IA septic system. Therefore, I have no concerns. Then we had a note from Neil and Carol Toderis, and they wrote on May 2nd. And their address is 59 Palmer, I think. As you request below, we individually do not object to the plans for your Palmer Ave construction regarding upgrading your existing structure, and appreciate that you will give close attention to the issues we have raised around privacy post-construction by landscape construction on the side of your home abutting ours. Your guarantee regarding your addressing these issues is very much appreciated. And we had an email, this is from Claire Balford. My husband Tom and I live at 54 Palmer. Our house is directly across the street. They are very kind and considerate neighbors. Period. That was on May 1st. Then we have a note from Thomas D. Leo and Catherine Malfa. I'm writing to confirm that we are neighbors. We live at 77. We support this construction project. That was on May 2nd. And then we had a note from well, it was from William Riley, but had to do with last neighbor good with late August start. That had to do with the previous people that we're talking about. They were asking about, how about a late August construction start? On April 29th, there was a note from Mary Mello, 86 Palmer. I am in support of the application for the demolition of the present house and construction of a new house. The Dutch colonial design will complement and enhance our neighborhood. And I think that was it.
Thank you very much.
I'm not too sure what that all was worth, but there you go. Okay, so now we'll have questions from the board. Ginny, we'll start with you, please.
Okay. First of all, Mr. Roy, thank you for the 3D rendering. I think it is helpful to see.
Ginny, is your mic on?
Yep, maybe I need to get closer. There we
Okay,
go.
thank you.
It is helpful to see to see it more visually than all this flat work and a lot of the numbers. But I do want to touch on the numbers because I thought I heard you say, Mr. Roy, that the height could be 3 feet taller? Is that what you said?
In Chatham, from the average grade plane, you are allowed to build 30 feet from the average grade plane. And we're,
Right. So that's true. And this house is, according to my calculations, it's 28.2, right? So that's 21 inches, not 3 feet. I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
it's up here.
See, if you look at the site plan,
Yep.
there's a building height requirement, so the maximum height, and this is measured from above sea level,
Yep.
so it's a little disconcerting, 94.3 feet. The proposed is 92.5, so basically 2 feet below the maximum height. Yeah, so 94.3, 92.5, basically 2 feet below.
All right, but the building height of the house is what I thought you were talking about, 3
The
feet.
building height of the house from the top of the foundation is 27 feet.
So we talked about this last time because I asked about the fact that the site plan didn't, I mean, your drawing did not equal the site plan. The site plan,
My drawings, so I'll explain.
Yeah, no, I
because
remember-
It's a good question.
okay,
So basically, the idea is that I know that the building is 27 feet from the top of the foundation because that's a number I have to give to the engineers so they know how tall the structure is. And then what they do, okay, is they figure out the average grade plane. And then they set the top of the foundation, all right? And that's how you get to that 28.5. That's why there's a discrepancy, because it's two different numbers. One's from the ground and the other's from the top of the foundation.
I appreciate that, and I do remember you mentioning that last time. What I also remember is that when we're talking about height, comparing height to height, we look at the site plan. So it's 92.5,
Yeah,
Mr.
so-
Riley, you're right, minus the average grade plane of 64.3 is the height of the proposed house, 28.2.
So
I just want to
21
clarify.
inches or whatever you came up with
Okay.
would be correct based upon that.
Okay, so 28.2 is 21 inches. Yep, okay, so I just wanted to confirm that the height of the house was 28.2. So when you said it's 3 feet, I thought that's what you said.
I
That was
did, because
really
I
my
was just
question.
taking 27 from 30, so.
Okay.
Well, you
I-
know,
I just want to
you know,
clarify the height.
You know, Rick is a fisherman, and sometimes, you know, they catch a fish that somehow they get bigger as you go along, but it's just 2 feet, basically.
It could be taller, and meet the regulation.
Right, a little
But
bit,
it's
a
not.
little bit taller. While we're talking about height, and you brought up a lot of comparison to 77, which is the neighbor, the abutter on the northern side. Their height, the height of their house, I just want to state, because we did talk a lot about neighboring properties last time, is 26.9. I just point that out. It is roughly the same size house, as you pointed out, Mr. Riley, but the height is different.
But I can explain that, because I think it's important to know why.
Okay,
Okay? So the house next door, 77, is a remodel. All right? And I'm sure that if the people at 77 were tearing down their house, okay, based upon the way everything gets constructed today, they would want taller ceiling heights on the first floor and taller ceiling heights on the second floor, because that's what everything is built today. In the case of 77, they didn't make the house taller, okay, because they would have had to take the second floor off of the existing house to be able to do that, okay? So they built it, okay, to match what was existing. If they were building from scratch, they most likely would have raised the ceiling heights on the first floor and the second floor, because that's routine and customary construction today. Everybody goes into a house, if you're a real estate agent and you go into a house and the ceilings are low, you have a much harder time selling that house than if you do if the ceilings are taller. So it's just the way things are built today.
yeah. I understand that, but we did talk a lot the last meeting about height, and you might remember, I mean, because of the criteria of it fitting in the neighborhood is a big part of the criteria. It was last time, probably will be this time. I think what you've done is really attractive. I just think that it is a little tall. And with respect to the other houses in the neighborhood, do you remember Mr. Upson brought in a 16-house comparison? He used that LiDAR research.
Which is completely unrelated to reality.
Well, it listed the ridge heights of 16 homes on Palmer Drive.
Yeah, but
But I would dare say, okay, that regardless of what Mr. Upson brought in, which was an experiment on his part, okay, it's not an adopted practice by the Zoning Board of Appeals, nor has it even been tested. The thing that's proven with the Zoning Board of Appeals is in the town's infinite wisdom, they created a height calculation that basically said, we don't want structures to be more than 30 feet from the average grade plane. And that's the criteria to which I build from, okay?
Yeah.
And so, you know, if I was here with this plan and I didn't have to come to the Zoning Board of Appeals because I have a I'm asking for forgiveness from a sideline setback, I would be well within my rights to build it, okay, at 27, or 28.5 feet from the average grade plane, right? So what I'm hanging my hat on, okay, it's not Buck Upson's experiment with 16 houses in the neighborhood, because you can also do the same thing, okay, because I drove through the neighborhood today, that there are many houses in that neighborhood that are on lots of very similar size, that are much larger, okay, than the house that we're proposing to build, okay? So you can go through the neighborhood and perform the same experiment and end up with the same type of thing. So, in all my years as a builder designer, okay, I've always respected the rules and regulations of the town and the bylaws, all right? And, I'm not here asking for forgiveness on the height of the building, because I've built it or designed it to the regulations that are in force, okay? And I didn't maximize it, okay? I just built it because geometrically, if something's 26 feet wide, it ends up being so tall.
All right, so as to my comment about Buck's useless piece of information, we measured buildings here from the average grade plane. And the stuff that he produced, which Thad Eldridge, the guy who produced it for him, said it bore no relationship to our bylaw in the way we measure height, because they give you the ridge elevation, but they don't give you the average grade plane for each of the properties. And that's how we measure buildings here. So that's why the information he provided you is useless in terms of our zoning bylaw and the way building height is calculated.
Well, I don't agree that it's useless. It gave us a subjective comparison of ridge heights provided by an engineer. So that we looked at the, I'm only bringing it up, and I want to move on. I'm only bringing it up because we didn't get new paperwork from the last meeting, and so I wanted to address that since that was talked about at the last meeting. And the height of this house, I wanted to clarify, because I thought Mr. Roy said it was 3 feet shorter, or that you could have built it 3 feet taller. And that is not accurate based on the calculation of that house. It's 28.2. Let's move on. My second question, Mr. Riley, is when you were talking about the comparison of square footage of the different houses, were you including the basement in those numbers?
No.
Okay.
And the reason that I don't
Yeah.
is that the information we get from the assessor's office is what's called net area. Net area is those parts of the building that are heated or cooled. So they don't include the basement or the garage. And as you know, garages add a great deal of mass, or can add a great deal of mass to a structure. So the numbers I provided you for the adjoining properties, almost all of whom have garages. The DeLeo and Malfa property do not. So those areas are actually, in terms of the mass of the structure, are actually somewhat misleading, because the structures all have 2-car garages, which typically add 576 square feet of building coverage. So, so it's somewhat deceiving. We use that because it's the only number we have that we can conveniently obtain from the town. Otherwise, we'd have to go through every building permit to
Right.
provide some information. So it's a relative number that we can use to compare, sort of apples to apples.
Well, that's why I asked, because on this email from Rick Roy's office on April 2023, I wasn't talking about garages, I was talking about basement. I just wanted to make sure, because we received both first and second floor and a number with the basement. The number with the basement is larger, obviously, 3755, which is not around the ballpark of the numbers you were mentioning. And you said it did not include the basement, and that's fine, because the numbers without the basement are 2531, which is very much in line with what you were saying. That's why I asked.
Right.
And I put that number down because it's asked for on the application for whatever reason, so.
Yeah, so I
that's-
just wanted to make sure that we were comparing apples to apples with
Right.
that. Okay, that's all my questions, thank you.
Lee?
I would agree with Ginny that the 3D video was very helpful. I liked the fact that it showed some landscaping and a fence. Would you say that was accurate, what you plan to do
Yes.
Well,
in terms of landscaping?
There's a pool, so you either need auto cover or a fence.
Yeah,
They've
so-
opted for a fence.
So the reason I put a fence around in the video that goes all the way around the property line, because I thought it would be fair to show what the size of the house was relative to the lot. So that fence is on the lot line. There would most likely be a fence and shrubbery across the face that faces the street. If they put an automatic pool cover on, it's not necessary to fence the entire property in, but as far as the look from the street, it would look like the video.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, what is the height of the first floor ceilings?
The
Oh, the
first
ceiling
ceiling
height?
height is 9'1".
Thank you.
Paul?
I have no questions. I asked questions at the last hearing and got my answers.
Randy?
Thank you. So gentlemen, did you know that the house next door that you want to talk about so much, 77, meets the sideline setbacks?
Yes, I know it does.
That's all I wanted to know.
Dave?
I don't have any further questions at this point, Dave.
But if I could just respond briefly to Randy. The reason why we don't move our house, the Dumas house, further forward, we have a septic system that fills up the front yard, and we have setbacks from that.
Can I,
In addition to that, okay, because we do have a 40-foot setback from the street, there isn't really a backyard to this house, because the way this house was built, after visiting the site, that for whatever reason, they put it all the way into the back corner of the lot, which means we're kind of handcuffed to what we can do with it. So the placement of the house was so that they could take advantage of a side yard where they don't really have a backyard.
but you could meet the sideline setbacks, couldn't you?
We could.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question has to do with the house being essentially forced to the left because of the pool, I presume. If the pool wasn't there, you could center it on the lot or make it all conforming. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay, so
Well,
it's the pool that's driving it.
The sideline setback, this house meets the sideline setback. The place where it doesn't meet the setback requirement is there's a second floor deck.
No, that's not true. The sideline setback, so in this particular case, all right, we're doing just exactly like the commissioner said, all right? The house is slid over a little bit because we have that existing nonconformity. But the one thing that I would like to point out, okay, is if you look at all the other houses that are in the neighborhood, they're all similarly shifted in that direction. So when you look at 77, 77 is close to is not within the setback, but again, you have to remember that the setback when these houses was built was 15 feet,
Right.
right? So this house is somewhat handcuffed because it's now got to go to R40 zoning, and that's 40 feet from the street and 25 feet from the sideline setback. But I don't believe that the movement of this house to where it's located, if you look at the house that's below it, okay, which is 59 or whatever, all right, they have a huge piece of land, okay, and their house is shifted way away from it, and the end of the house that's near the Dumases on this side is the garage. So it lends itself to this setup, okay, without really being a detriment to anybody in the neighborhood. And again, the neighbors have all taken a look at this. And we were fair about this when we did this, okay? We didn't place the house here without placing the pool on it, because we thought it was only fair that the neighbors knew that the reason why it was being placed in this location was because there was a possibility that the swimming pool would go in. and we wanted them to know that there was a swimming pool going in. So if the neighbors that live in the neighborhood do not feel that this arrangement is more detrimental to the neighborhood, okay, because I've been to the Board of Appeals meetings many times, okay, and I know that when, you know, when somebody voices a concern over something, okay, it goes to the attention of the members of the board, because your function, okay, is to make sure you're being fair to everyone, all right? We were fair to everyone by going out and being truthful about what it is that we were doing. I could have easily not drawn a pool on here, come here and gotten approval for this, all right? And then later put the swimming pool in without having to come back before the zoning board of appeals for it. So I want to make sure that you understand, okay, one of the reasons that we did that was so that when you got the correspondence from the people who live in this neighborhood, you got it with them knowing all the facts. So,
And another thing to remember is that when this, as Rick said, you know, when this property was developed, it was a 10,000 square foot subdivision, R10, and the street setback was 25 feet, and the sideline setbacks were 15. And so there are other houses in the neighborhood that have similar nonconformities. And I know that many times I've heard board members say, is it, you know, the question of whether it's substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood is oftentimes best answered by the neighbors. And in this instance, all the neighbors have no objection to this proposal. So it's pretty clear that they don't think it's substantially more detrimental to their neighborhood.
Did you have anything else?
All right, so it's your contention that you thought you could come here and tell us in your presentation that you're only missing the setback sideline on one, although the
No,
ad says both.
I misspoke.
Yes, you did. Okay, thank you. Just
And-
for the
and-
benefit, no, I didn't ask you anything yet. You also think that you can come here and ask to be closer to both neighbors and that we wouldn't question that, and then, so we wouldn't know about the pool and you could snooker us. But we would have asked you, why do you need to go closer to both neighbors? And then what would you have said then? What would you have said?
okay, you asking me to
Yes,
answer that
now I'm
question now?
asking you. Yes.
Well, first of all, I'm a little bit shocked, okay, that at your tone, okay, because I'm not the enemy. I'm just somebody here presenting a case to the zoning board of appeals, which I've done many times, and I have a great deal of respect for the members on the board, okay? And I certainly did not insinuate in any way, shape, or form, okay, that we were trying to dupe the Board of Appeals, okay? Pay good money for an engineer, okay, to delineate on a site plan, which makes it very clear as to what the setbacks are and where we're encroaching, okay? Bill did misspeak, okay? But the one thing that I will say about the rear setback, okay, is that we did make it less non-conforming than it is presently, okay?
You still didn't answer the question. Sorry about my tone, but when you come in here and start talking about 3 feet under, I mean, why do you do that? You know it's 2 feet. What is this?
I
You
had
know,
no
it's
intention-
annoying.
I
It's
apologize if you're
Yeah.
thinking that well, first of all, think whatever you may, okay? I'm a very hardworking, very honest guy, okay? I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm a little bit put off, okay, by the fact that I'm being reprimanded by you. So,
Well,
whatever it is,
I'm a little
okay.
bit put off that you come in here and you're
I
trying to
did
tell us
nothing
one
to
thing.
do that, but
And
that's
if
okay.
you know that you misspoke about the sidelines,
I
why didn't you
didn't
correct
misspeak about
yourself?
the
No, I said,
sidelines.
Bill, why don't you just correct yourself then?
And I corrected him when he said it.
After I brought it up. I mean, if I'm being out of line, I apologize, but I just find it a little bit, you know, I'll just say annoying, that you said you were gonna come back with some changes or a different plan, you asked for a continuance, when you took an hour and a half last time, and now taking more time this time with nothing new, just basically a pretty please.
First of all,
Okay,
I did not say that I was coming back, okay, with a different plan.
Rick, you know, we don't need to be accusing one another of this, that, and the other thing. We need to move along, okay? All right?
Right.
Did anybody else have any other questions before we go into deliberations? Okay, Paul,
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
we need a vote on that. Lee?
Yes.
Paul?
Paul votes yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Dave?
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes, too. Okay, deliberations. Dave, let's start with you.
Well, I think that, I think I indicated the last time that I didn't feel that this proposal was substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. And then when I drove out the other day and took another look, and I do appreciate getting the 3D video. That helped in some respects. But I didn't feel initially that it was, that the proposal would have stood out in some way from, especially from the houses as they presented on either side of it and other parts of the neighborhood. It's definitely of the next one over is also a gambrel. I mean, clearly most of the houses in the neighborhood were constructed in Cape style, many of them, most of them. But among the immediate neighbors, I didn't feel like it really stood out so much or was so different or was so, I did during the deliberations last time, I did feel, I think that several members had had problems with the pool. And I think I'm speculating that these members felt that pool was kind of in your face, if you will, being the way it was. So looking further with what they proposed, and I can see that in a way, but looking further what they proposed, I think that the proposed fence that they've talked about, at least the fence across the front, extending off the front of the house and separating, if you will, that side yard, which is the one they can really use, I think that's an important addition, and were we to approve this, I would want that to be one of the conditions. I think that's an important part of this proposal. It didn't appear in the plan or the site plan or anything, but I think that's important. So all of that said, I will support it. I don't think it's so, I just don't think to me, I don't feel it would be fair to, I don't think that this is substantially more detrimental in the neighborhood. I did also happen to notice on my drive the other day that there's it's not a big, but it's a plunge pool being put in the yard almost right across the street, Lois. So there is, the pool thing, I'm not 100% in favor of pools, but I also know that it's a new standard for many, many homes, and I don't have a problem with that. I would also just like to say that there has been today and previously when this one came before us and other times, there are numbers that tend to get thrown around here in these meetings that sometimes I hear them, and it may not be the intent to obfuscate, but there's a lot of obfuscation that can happen with numbers here. And, we have some newer members, and it gets, sometimes, and we got into some going back and forth over some numbers on this one that I think it's easy to get, when we get into that stuff, we're kind of easy to lose sight of the overall synthesis that we're making in making a judgment, whether it's substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. But I do understand, and I understand when, if someone says, it could be 3 feet higher, but, you know, Rick unfortunately presented it by the different standard than what the zoning bylaw goes by. And, you know, there's room for misunderstanding when it comes to the presentation of some of these things. So I think it's important to try to make sure we're on the same page when we aren't sure we are with these numbers. But I've seen it, I'm not just here, I've seen it in any number of other cases as well. So, enough said. Thanks.
Ginny?
Well, as I mentioned, I like the, I'm a visual person, so I like the new rendering, and I think it looks really nice. But I'm also a numbers person, and I do try to make sense of this packet of information by really quantifying this. And so I'm going to throw out just another number. I talked a lot about the height this time because I talked about it last time, and I wanted to reconcile. But really, my main concern is the setback on the southern abutter side. I just think that an increase to nonconformity when you're already at 22 feet, which is the existing, and going to 17, is, you know, it's a 5.2 foot increase in the nonconformity, which is 23%. I'm just putting it out there for context, because we're not talking about 50 feet and moving it in
Right.
a few feet.
If I could respond very, very briefly.
Inappropriate, Mr. Riley, please let the member finish her
Oh,
conversation.
I thought she was
Okay.
asking for a comment.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, so maybe I inadvertently was, but, so my comment really is about the setbacks. I think that's it is very much skewed to that side of the property, and maybe the neighbor in 59 doesn't mind right now, but they could move, and it's really close to that neighbor. So that's my main concern.
Lee?
I tend to agree with Dave Beach. I don't think this construction, this plan is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. I think, yes, it's one of the bigger houses, but it's surrounded by bigger houses. Even though the neighborhood is modest, this area of the street has a few larger homes, and I think it fits in well. I think a huge plus is the open space in back. I think that really helps. I like the fact that it's 40 feet away from the street. So I would support this.
Paul?
Well, I think, unfortunately, we have had a number of numbers thrown out in terms of corners and setbacks and so forth and heights, which get confusing, and when they're used with respect to the zoning ordinance itself. But as I indicated before, I think that this house design does fit in with certainly the houses that are on that side of Palmer. I went through the neighborhood again today, looking at Palmer Drive and also the adjoining street. And I don't think that the difference in setback amount from going from the 22 to the 17 feet with respect to the westerly sideline is of significance enough that it would render the entire project substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. So I would stick with my original opinion, which is that this is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. And I do not think that the pool should be a disqualifying aspect of the project, given that the neighbors who are supporting it support the pool, given that they are aware of it, and the fact that the pool, generally speaking, could be built without us being involved with respect to the project at some later date. I realize that might mean that we would at some point insist ahead of that, that the house move more in a northerly direction and not grant a change in the setback from 22.2 to 17 feet. But I really don't think that that necessarily would be an issue if, in fact, we were going forward without the pool being involved. The setback with respect to the back and the front is really controlled by the septic, and I agree with that. So my tendency would be to say it is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll try to have a nice tone. Sorry for, I just thought it was a little buildup. So to the extent that I was in any way rude, I apologize. So I want to go over the criteria, because that's what we're here to do. So the adequacy of the size and site, including but not limited to maximum lot or building coverage and setbacks. So I think that this is a big house on a small lot. And I think it's a nice house. I don't think it's too tall. It's good. Those three are like the three musketeers back there. And I think it's gonna look nice. I said last time that I think it needs to be bigger. It looks dwarfed. Doesn't look good right now. And I like the design of the house, and I like both houses on both sides. But I think it needs to stay in the setbacks. And I'm sorry if you don't like that, but I think it's important, because that's why we have a bylaw about neighbors. And there's nowhere in the bylaw that says if the neighbors say it's okay, then it meets the criteria. So I apologize if I seem odd, thinking that that's important. But I went to the neighborhood, and one of the people that lived right there, I'm not going to say who it was, but I am an officer of the court, and this is right hand to God here, said didn't like the pool on the side. It was going to be noisy and it looked funny in the front. Swear to God. So some people don't want to do that. They don't want to write their name because they don't want problems in the neighborhood. They don't want to have problems with their neighbors. But I'm not going to let that affect me either, because it's not to me now about the pool. You caused me to have another chance to review all this, and I think it's important to be within the setbacks when it comes to distance from the neighbors, because that's how the town wants it. That's why the town meeting voted for this bylaw. So it would avoid also overcrowding of land. And so to the extent the proposed increase in the nonconformities, that's the third criteria. I think it's 25% closer, basically, and I think that's a lot. You're already nonconforming. Now, if you already were meeting the setbacks and you just wanted to tweak over a little bit, that would have been different. But you're already nonconforming on both sides, and now you want to be more nonconforming on both sides. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'll hear from the chair, and before we vote, and if I'm persuaded differently, then I'll keep an open mind.
Well, I think Randy has hit on the important points for me, that the house is going to be placed, it's driven by the pool, and what Paul said about the pool is 100% correct, but I'm sorry, that's what's driving this house too close to the neighbor on the left. And there has to be something done either to reduce the house so it isn't infringing more on those setbacks, or the pool made much smaller, or I don't know what you could do with it anyway. The combination of the two things is just too much for me. It's just too much. And so I would have to tell you that I would vote no.
Well, can I say something, Dave?
Yes.
I recall years ago, a chairman of this august body said to me, if the neighbor doesn't mind that there's an encroachment on the sideline setback, then it's okay with me. And that's the situation we have here today.
Well, if you're talking about the future, we don't know. You know, we've said this, and I know you don't agree with, you've had the discussion with Sari, the discussion with me and others too about, I've come to believe the future is just as important as it is today.
May I
And-
say something, Mr. Chairman?
Could I finish talking?
That's all right. I'm
Would you
just
mind?
asking.
So what was true today has got to be true tomorrow, meaning that if we're allowing an infringement on the setback to be ignored, and as you know, if this wasn't, you'd be in here asking for a variance and you wouldn't get anywheres. But it isn't. However, you're moving to southerly and easterly or westerly, whatever the two directions are. And I'm sorry, that to me is just flaunting the zoning in everybody's face. Rick, what did you want to say?
So, first of all, seeing we're correcting things, we are lessening the encroachment into the rear setback, which is always looked, in my mind, positively by the Zoning Board of Appeals. So we're not making it worse on the rear, we're making it less. The other thing is, which we haven't said, and I think the thing that's a little bit troubling for me is that we came here talking about massing, and I think that we've convinced everybody that the house isn't big, or too big, more detrimental. And then, before we get into a situation now where the deliberation gets closed, no discussion was made of the setbacks, okay, prior to the thing being closed, but regardless, okay, the setback on this property when the lot was created was 15 feet. So there are houses in this neighborhood that were legitimately built within 15 feet of the property line. We're asking to be 17. So had the zoning not changed in this lot, which made it non-conforming, okay, at 15 feet, okay, it would have been conforming, and we're at 17. So basically what you're telling me is that because these people have a lot, that the zoning went from R10 to R40, all right, that had they been doing this when they were zoned the way the lots were originally developed before the planning board, they wouldn't be encroaching the setback at all. Because the setback is 15 feet and we're at 17. So that's the reason why when we came to you and we said we'd like to move the house to that position, we knew that a house built down the street that was built to the setbacks at the time would be within 15 feet of the property line, and we're 17. So they're being penalized basically because the town changed the zoning bylaw. Otherwise, we would be before you, we wouldn't be before you, because we would have met the setbacks, okay, and we could have put the house in that location.
So, Mr. Riley, I think you've heard how we all feel.
Dave has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave?
I just want to try to clarify something, because I'm looking at the site plan. And the setback that Randy referenced, that's correct. That's the one they're proposing to increase the setback. It's also true that you're decreasing the setback on the westerly side. However, not so much with the building, but the bulkhead is 8 feet from the property line. So if you read the ad, you're decreasing you're also decreasing the setback on that side. The board generally is okay with that part, and applaud that you are doing that. But I suspect that would be a reason you would be here, even under the other zoning. So, you know, there's just been a lot of confusion and continued confusion in all this, and I'm sorry to have seen that, but it's understandable to a certain degree that until we find that we have a better way of understanding each other, we're not, we have these problems. But I think it's true. It's clear that in order for that pool to meet its 25-foot setback and be in that location, that did not give them that's what I see them seeking to decrease the setback on that southerly side. That's pretty clear from looking at the plan. So,
Okay, Mr. Riley?
We would request a further continuance for the relocation of the building.
Okay. Paul?
Do we have a date that?
Yeah, we're working on the end of September now. So that would be like the 28th,
September 28th.
yeah.
I'll move to grant the requested continuance to September 28th.
Dave Veach seconds.
Okay, we need a vote on that. Lee?
Yes.
All
Paul?
votes yes.
Yes.
Randy?
Each votes yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me get rid of this, Sarah. And I guess I better save this stuff, huh? Did we really say September 28th? Man, I don't think for a second we're not gonna have a third meeting in September, because I'm pretty sure we will. Okay. Let's try 23 Harding's Lane.
Application number 23-054, John C. Carter Letsu Family QRPT, care of William F. Riley Esquire. P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 23 Harding's Lane, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14C, Block 28, Lot 19. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the partial demolition of the existing dwelling and construction of an addition and deck. The proposed addition will comply with all bulk and dimensional requirements of the bylaw, but is considered a substantial alteration, and under the second except clause of Section 6 of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, such substantial alteration requires the grant of a special permit. The existing building coverage is 2,369 square feet, 7.9%, and the proposed building coverage is 2,704 square feet, 9%, where 10% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 116 feet of frontage where 150 feet is required, and contains 30,150 square feet where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of Protected Bylaw.
Do you think we can get the audience to quiet down?
I heard some hissing and booing.
That was a
Oh, that was Jay and Chantel, I'm sorry.
All right, okay, so this is a proposal where they have sort of the left wing of the house, the existing house, and they want to remove it, and they want to add space upstairs. And so the front of the house doesn't change much at all. Karen Kempton is online. She's the architect. And I'm going to ask her to describe for you how this design evolved in her discussions with the property owners. Karen?
Good afternoon, Karen Kempton, architect for Jane Carter and George Letso. Sarah, if you can bring up the existing plans of the house, I think they were towards the end of the packet. Existing plans of the first floor. Yep, there we go. So this is the existing house. And initial discussions with Jane centered around renovating the guest wing, which is on the left side. They refer to it as the aft house. And the guest wing is only accessed now through the garage. It is not connected directly to the main house, so this was problem number one for them. The existing rooms are also quite small. The 2 bedrooms are only 8 feet wide, and the living room is only 8 feet wide. In addition, Jane requested a larger family room that could be enjoyed by all as the main TV room. You can see on the existing house, there is a living room on the front of the house. But again, this is fairly uncomfortable in that it's closed in and it's the not open floor plan. So we discussed demolishing the entire house and building new. However, Jane decided that the main house fit their needs if a large family room could be added. So we decided just to rebuild the existing garage, the breezeway, and the guest wing, and add a large family room on the first floor and the guest bedrooms above. If we can pull up the new first floor plan. So the access would be directly from the sitting room into the family room rather than through the garage. If we go to the front elevation, you'll see that the ridge of the addition is 1 foot lower than the existing ridge, and this is to keep it an appropriate scale. There are no second floor dormers on the front of the house or proposed on the front of the house, only on the rear. And the garage front roof line makes the character of the existing garage, or matches the character of the existing garage, same height, same width. We work generally within the existing footprint and match the left side wall to the existing location, which conforms to the 25-foot setback. The garage is no closer to the street than the existing house. The existing guest wing has crawl space below, but we are adding a full basement. And although the addition adds 650 square feet of living space below grade, it does not affect the scale of the addition. So we hope that you agree that this addition is not detrimental to the neighborhood and it keeps the character of the existing house while allowing the Carter-Letzow family to enjoy their house with their children and future grandchildren. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen. So again, as Karen indicated, as you look at the house, the left-hand wall of the exterior wall of the house is no closer to the neighbor than the existing wall, but they have expanded it somewhat internally towards the existing deck, where the current garage and that guest wing does not currently connect to the deck. Under the new design, it will connect to the deck. So I'll run through the criteria. So adequacy of the size of the site in terms of the size of the proposed use. So the applicants are, as we've said, are replacing the left wing of the home with a slightly expanded left wing and a covered porch. That will increase the building coverage from 2,369 square feet, 7.9%, to 2,704 square feet, 9%. Because this lot has 30,000 square feet of buildable upland, their maximum building coverage is 10%. The front of the left wing, the garage, will be 10 feet closer to the street, but will still be over 40 feet from the street setback. Accordingly, the building meets all setbacks and building coverage requirements of the current bylaw. Compatibility of the size of the proposed structure with neighboring properties. Again, we have attached, a sheet at the back where we list the assessor's net area numbers for the homes in this neighborhood. And even though we're expanding this, we're still going to be one of the more modest homes in the neighborhood. The extended proposed increase in the non-conforming nature, because the building meets all the dimensional requirements of our zoning bylaw. The only increase in the non-conforming nature of the structure is the increase in living space, which is considered an intensification of the non-conforming use. Suitability of the site, including but not limited to impact on neighboring properties, on groundwater, water bodies, and stormwater runoff. So if you look at the site plan, we do have a wetland, it's really a ditch that runs along the back of the property and sort of curves around on one side. But the proposed construction is over 100 feet from the rear of the property, and even at its closest point where it runs up the side of the lot, we're still 90 feet away. So we don't believe we're going to have any negative impacts on those. We don't think there's any stormwater runoff concerns because of the level nature of the ground there. Impact of scale, siting, and mass on neighborhood visual character. So the applicants believe that due to the scale, siting, and mass of the proposed additions, the neighborhood visual character will improve. As you know, the existing garage and connector are stepped back from the front of the building, and the new garage will match the front line of the building, which will still be separated by the covered porch. So there's not a solid wall facing the street. And of course, the right-hand side of the building, while changing on the inside, will not change on the exterior. Accordingly, we believe the proposed changes are not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. Compatibility of proposed use with neighboring uses. It's a single-family residence in a single-family neighborhood. No change in sewage disposal, source of water and drainage. We don't think there'll be any impact on traffic flow and safety or noise and litter. All our utilities are adequate, and numbers 11 and 12 are not applicable. So we think that Karen has done a great job working with the Carter-Letsu family and that this proposed change is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience today or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate you'd like to join the conversation.
There is no one to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. First, we have a note from Judith Georgia, our health agent here in Chatham. She writes on 6/27, I have reviewed the plan to renovate. The plan as proposed does not add sewer flow. Property is connected to the municipal sewer. Then we have a note from Carol and John Dowd. Their address is 31 Hardings Lane. They write on June 15th. We're writing to ask the board to give its approval for the special permit. As the immediate abutters to the east and one of the most affected by this request, we believe that the proposed addition is in keeping with the character of the existing house and neighborhood and will be a welcome addition to Hardings Lane. I thank you for your consideration. Then we have a note from Ron Rudnick. He's at 10 Crisscross Lane. He writes on June 8th, I've been the owner of 10, and I'm writing since 2003, and I'm writing to the board to offer my support. As their neighbor to the north, the rear of my property backs up to their property. I've reviewed the plans and feel the proposed construction will be a welcome addition to the neighborhood. Since this is directly in our backyard, we would request the board have a restriction on construction from May 1st through October 1st. Thank you for consideration of my letter. Then we have a note from Jim and Cynthia Marsh. They're at 271 Stage Harbor Road. They read on June 7th. We're the owners of 271, which is located and so on and so forth. Our home sits directly across from Jane and George's home at 23, who we understand have applied for a special permit to do some renovations. We have lived at 271 since early 2017 and enjoy the proximity to our neighbors and the character of the homes in our area. We have reviewed the proposal before you and feel it'll be a wonderful addition to the neighborhood. We wholeheartedly support their request relief and hope that the board will unanimously approve the special permit. Thank you for your consideration of our letter of support. Is there anyone today that would like to speak either against this or has a specific question? If so, now's the time to ask to be included in the conversation.
There is no one to speak in opposition or with a question.
Okay, questions from the board. Lee?
I actually have no questions.
Paul?
I have no questions.
No,
Andy?
no question.
Dave?
No questions.
Ginny?
No questions.
Well, I don't either.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need a vote on that, Lee?
Yes.
Paul votes yes.
Randy votes yes.
Veach votes yes.
I vote yes, okay. Paul?
Looks to me like a very nice design to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. I don't think in any way it's substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, so I will support it.
Randy?
Meets the criteria, and I'm in support.
Dave?
Yeah, I agree with Paul, and, you know, I'd also like to just take an opportunity to thank Karen for providing us with both the gross floor areas and the living areas. That's maybe a step in the right direction.
I think in truth, Karen's arm was twisted by a certain person to my right, but that's okay. Karen gets credit for doing it, too. Was it that twisted? No, okay.
Ginny?
Yeah.
Karen, I think the drawings are great. I had the opportunity to meet Mrs. Carter on the site visit, and I think the plans are wonderful, the thoughtful approach I appreciate. Agree with my colleagues, it meets all the criteria. I would support it if I were voting.
Lee?
I agree with my colleagues as well. It's a great project, meets the criteria, and I will support it.
Paul?
As I said, I will support the application. I guess I'll move to approve the application as submitted. What are your plans in terms of building, Bill?
Well, we think that this property is one where we don't need restrictions on construction. Although Mr. Rudnick indicated he's in a butter to the rear, he's over 100 feet away from the project. And there's plenty of room on the lot for all construction vehicles. And it's not really a huge construction project, so we would ask there be no restrictions on construction.
So are you anticipating that construction would start 30 days after approval?
No, I assume it's going to start after Labor Day,
Okay.
so it's really next summer.
So a restriction that it would not begin before Labor Day is not a problem.
That's correct.
All right. I don't think there's a need to modify any special conditions in any case with respect to the 110 Cross Street, given that our normal conditions would be, would apply. I guess I'll leave it up to the board. What does the board consider with respect to conditions?
All right, let me ask around. What do you think, Randy?
You know, I don't like to put conditions on. I'm with you on that, Mr. Riley. I think if you didn't have to come here, you wouldn't have any, except for what the town provides for. So I'm willing to go along with my colleagues, but I don't have any particular opinion on it.
Dave?
As much as I admire Ron Rudnick, I don't, you know, when he's suggesting 5-1 to 10-1 for no construction, I don't think it's something we can reasonably ask people to do. No. I'd go along with what Paul is suggesting.
Ginny?
I agree. When I read that, I thought 5 months was too long. I would agree with Dave Veach and Paul.
Lee?
Yes, I would agree as well.
And incidentally, I think Mr. Rudnick is one of your clients, is he not, Mr. Riley?
I have many clients.
Well,
Okay, Paul.
I think if Ron was on the other end of this conversation, he would not be happy with a construction that would require May 1 to October 1st deadline. So I guess what I'm saying is I'll move to approve the application with our standard conditions, which would be all construction activity and vehicles would be contained on site or at a neighboring property with the permission of the property owner. That between June 30th and Labor Day, there would be no exterior construction will be allowed, no work would be permitted on weekends, construction activity between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only. And I take it that that isn't a problem if you're starting Labor Day or later.
It is a problem because I learned recently that when you impose those restrictions, it also includes landscaping. And so, which I think, by the way, is perfectly unreasonable. But, so what you're talking about is if they finish the interior construction on the house by next July 1st or June, whatever the date is, great, they can keep working on the inside, but they can't do any landscaping outside. I just think
Well,
it's, I think under the circumstances of this lot and this location, there's no reason to impose anything other than no work before Labor Day 2023.
Well, I would agree that it makes sense to exclude landscaping on this lot. Other than that, I'm not sure that I see a reason why we shouldn't impose the other restrictions.
I think you're right,
Well,
Paul.
Well, I mean, other than the fact that, whatever Dave Veach gave us the quote of what percentage of building permits come out of zoning board of appeals, it's a very small percentage. They're the people, and the construction people who work for them, who suffer because of these restrictions. Like, oh, take the summer off, guys. Well, that's when they want to get the work done.
No, I thought what we finished talking about was that at least you weren't planning to start before Labor Day, and you've got the entire winter to operate under these constructions without any difficulty. The only thing that's restricting you in that time frame is the construction activity and vehicles to be contained on site. So really, you're just talking about next summer, and it
Right.
would not include landscaping. So I think on that basis, I'll move for those conditions. If the board doesn't want to approve it, then we'll go with that.
Looking for a second?
Dave Veach seconds.
Need a vote on that? Lee?
I vote yes.
Paul votes yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Dave?
Veach votes yes.
I vote yes. Okay. So? That was that was the condition vote.
You want the conditions read again?
No, 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 no. Now we need a real vote.
All right, well, I thought we had just done that. If not,
No, what we
I'll
did
move
was
to
the
approve the application with those conditions.
Okay, there you go.
Okay?
Dave Veach seconds.
Lee?
Yes.
Paul votes yes.
Yes.
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. That's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much, Mr. Riley. Here you go. Please, Sarah, we got 23-055.
Application number 23-055, GHW Realty Trust, care of James M. Norcross Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02663. Owners of property located at 739 Kroll Road, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 12I, Block 6, Lot 1A. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and detached barn and the construction of a new dwelling. The existing dwelling is non-conforming, and it is located 23.9 feet from the road where a 40-foot setback is required, and 20 feet from the northerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The existing barn is non-conforming, and it is located 19.4 feet from the southerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The proposed dwelling will conform to road and abutter setback requirements. The existing building coverage is 2,942 square feet, and the proposed building coverage is 2,888 square feet, where 2,850 square feet is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 123.04 feet of frontage where 150 feet is required, and contains 43,539 square feet where 60,000 square feet is required in the R60 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protective bylaw.
We received the following letter written on July 11th. On behalf of the applicant for the above referenced application, I'm writing to respectfully request a continuance of the scheduled hearing until September 14, 2023. The Historical Commission continued the matter until its July 18th meeting, and therefore we will not have final determination from the Historical Commission before Thursday's hearing. I will plan to attend the hearing on Thursdays to answer any questions. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Very truly yours, James M. Norcross. I don't see Mr. Norcross, but I see his partner, Mr. Riley. And so are you here to answer our questions?
I am.
Okay, I have one.
Then I-
What?
then I have an answer.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Let's suppose the Historical Commission said, well, we're going to impose an 18-month demolition delay. How would that affect this?
Well, I happened to have that conversation with young Mr. Norcross today.
Okay,
And I told him that if it had been my project, I would have proceeded today. Because it doesn't matter what they say, whatever, if they impose a delay, eventually the delay runs out and you go ahead and construct. He thought that he would be continuing the matter without pressing forward today, would be showing a sign of respect to the Historical Commission. And so that's why they decided to request for the continuance.
interesting. Well, I agree with you, Mr. Riley, because let's look at two other aspects. It would give him an opportunity to discuss without necessarily a vote, to find out if we had any problems with this. And it's a big project, as you know, maybe you don't, but it's a big project. And secondly, you know the domino effect. Bing, 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 bing. Oh, September 14th. Okay, Sarah. So that's either the second or third that we already have for September 14th. I can't wait for September so we can have 3 meetings. You know, it's that. But anyway, so just convey my, well,
No, I'll be happy to report to Mr. Norcross that your advice was the same as my advice.
well,
Unfortunately, he didn't ask me until after he sent the letter, so, and then he had to pick the kids up at childcare at 4
Well,
o'clock.
that's more important than this, so there you go. Okay. Let's hear the hissing and the booing from the audience, please. We have a couple of more people that have come in. All right. So, anybody have any comments, or have I said too much? I've said too much. Go ahead, Paul. September 14th,
September 14th, I'll move.
2023.
I'll move to grant the requested continuance to September 14th, 2023.
Dave Veach seconds.
We need a vote. Lee?
Yes.
Paul?
All votes yes.
Randy?
Yes,
Veach votes
Dave?
yes.
And I vote yes. A unanimous decision for Mr. Norcross, not for you and me. And there you go. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Before we read 23-059, I should tell you, Mr. Riley, I will not be voting on this. Ms. Fenwick will be voting in my place, and I still will participate in the hearing, but I will not be a voter, okay? So, please, roll.
Application number 23-059, Joan Ann Barsamian, care of William F. Riley Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 75 Hallway Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 17C, Block 26, Lot 22. The applicant seeks to extend special permit number 19-008 for 1 year. The current expiration date is July 22nd, 2023, and the proposed expiration date is July 22nd, 2024. Special permit number 19-008 allowed the applicant for the construction of an addition and deck within the 50-foot setback to the Coastal Conservancy District. The lot contains 10,551 square feet of buildable upland in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 14, and Section 8D2B of the protective bylaw.
Now it goes like that.
Well, you know, as it approaches the cocktail hour, I didn't know if you wanted to go through a full hearing on this or simply consider the question of the extension,
Why don't we consider the question of the extension?
okay? We got this approval initially in 2019. The matter was litigated. The decision came out during COVID. So no work has been done in the client, Mr. Barsamian, thought that because of the emergency orders, that there might have been an extension resulting from the COVID policies. But we checked with the building department, and we learned that there was no extension as a result of the COVID policies. So that's why we require the 1-year extension.
Okay. How about questions from the board? Randy?
I liked your explanation in the written better, because you gave us good cause there, and what you just said wasn't even entirely accurate, never mind good cause. Because the decision from the appeals court came out, didn't it come out before the pandemic?
No.
No?
I think it was in 2021. And so therefore, it was after COVID had started.
But you got the okay from this board during COVID, right?
Well, we did.
You did.
yeah.
But I just don't, I thought
On the
family
remand.
matters was a much better reason, and I'm happy to support that, so do you want to modify your argument?
No. No.
Okay. Dave Veach?
I have no questions, Dan.
Ginny?
No questions?
Lee?
No questions.
Paul?
I guess I'm confused about where we are right now. Are you, at this point, we're talking about, because you've handed out zoning bylaw analysis for this location, but
I
that's
didn't
not what
know-
you want to do.
Well, in my conversations with Sarah, it had been indicated because some of the members who are on the board today weren't members at that time, that perhaps there would be a full discussion. So that's why I passed those out.
I see. But really what you're looking for is just an extension, and you're basing it on the pandemic and family matters that resulted in delays that require the requested extension?
Yes.
And this has not been extended before?
No, it has not.
And did you mention litigation?
Yes, it was originally approved in 2019. It was, pardon me, it was denied in 2019. We appealed that decision to the Superior Court. The Superior Court, after a trial, issued a remand order directing the board to issue the special permit, which happened, 2 years ago, basically. And because of the pandemic and other family matters, they weren't able to move forward, so.
All right, that clarifies the situation for me. And we don't have any reason to indicate that this is, what is being represented is not correct, as far as I know. So I don't have any other questions.
I have one. Would it be less than correct to state that your client in the past has been less than forthcoming? Is that a correct statement or not? Remember, I'm not voting.
I understand. I'm old, and so my memory's not what it used to be. So,
Okay.
if you could give me an example, I'd be happy to.
Well, I'm not going to
respond.
give you an example. I'm just going to ask you a simple question. Do you have any reason to believe that the plans that we approved for the special permit 2 years ago are going to be modified in any way, or are going to be thrown out or anything?
Well, I've had discussions with him about that, and I've given him my opinion about the wisdom of those.
And, but that's their real intention, isn't it?
Well, I disagree with your word selection,
Okay.
but
Choose your own.
I will acknowledge it's something that's under consideration. I can tell you that I've told him that I don't think it's a very good idea, and I don't think he should proceed with them. But that's so it's something that's under consideration.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
So as, just for the purposes of public or anybody that is watching on TV, so the Town of Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals Rules and Regulations, Section 5E, limitations on approval. Last sentence, a reasonable extension of said time may be granted by the board in the case of an appeal to the Superior Court or Land Court under Mass General Law 4817. So we're not going by that right now, so.
No.
But, or for other good cause shown. So if they had some family issues that I don't need to know the details about, and if that's the reason, they have some personal issues why they couldn't start construction, could be finances, could be because they just couldn't hire somebody, it could be supply chain problems. If it's something like that, then that's good cause. Can you tell me, as an officer of the court, that that's why we're here? Good cause shown, like that?
The principal reason why they need the extension relates to construction or attempted construction and contract issues with proposed contractors that got put off because of the pandemic. There were some family matters that exacerbated that situation,
Okay.
which are really not for public.
No, and I'm not asking,
Yeah.
no, not at all. And I'm happy to grant it if there's good cause shown, because that's what we're supposed to follow the rules, so that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay, Paul.
All right, I'll move to grant the requested extension as requested.
Dave Veach seconds.
Okay, then you five are the voters. Ginny, yes or no?
Yes or no to? Are we deliberating at all?
The extension that Mr.
Oh.
Riley's, he wants another year.
Okay, I'm going to say no, but here's why. Because, and I appreciate you putting this together, because I wasn't here then, but I did go back and I looked at both the 2019 and the 2021 ZBA hearing, where in 2019 they proposed these changes, which in your own words were very small, very modest, one bedroom, one bathroom, 8 by 6. And then it was approved in 2021. So it's really just, that's 4.5 years. And I appreciate that there can be, can be these extenuating circumstances. But, it's just been a lot of passage of time. And with that change of time, people change their mind, they change some things. And so I'm of the thought that take the time that you want and that you're requesting and resubmit it when you're ready. That's all. So that's why I would say no.
Lee?
I agree with Ginny, and I would say no as well.
Paul?
Well, I think based on the representations with respect to good cause, I would say yes.
And
Randy?
And I'm going to stick with the good cause and the family, and I'll say yes.
Dave Veach?
And I would say yes.
Okay.
If I could address the two members who was
Sure, go ahead.
So I've been doing this for 50 years, and this would be the first time in 50 years a request for a one-year extension would be denied. And I think that, the fact that there was a delay from 2019, you can't consider that. You can only consider the period from the date of the approval after the court decision, which is 2021, so that's 2 years. We had a pandemic during that time period that caused many different types of problems for many different types of people, including the applicant in this case. And I think it's very unfair for you to say no just because of the passage of time. When the modification is very reasonable, and saying, oh, we'll come back with another application, it's going to be exactly the same. So it's a lot simpler if you simply grant the extension. We don't have to file a new application. We don't have to have another hearing, all of which takes staff time, takes your time, and costs the client money. I'd ask you to reconsider.
Okay, then I'll call for a vote. Paul?
I'll vote yes, grant the extension.
Randy?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Jenny?
No.
Lee?
I'll reconsider, yes.
Okay, that passes 4-1.
Thank you very much.
All right. So what we need to do now is finish this meeting and go into executive session. But I think, Paul, our motion needs to be that we will not be coming back into our regular scheduled meeting, and that when we have an adjournment in our special executive session, that's the end of it for today. So I don't know how you word that.
I will so move. Just a minute, I will give you I'll give you something a little better than that.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll move to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, 784 Main Street, and the chair declares that the open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares with no return to open session. That is the motion.
Okay, great. We need to have that seconded.
Dave Veach seconds.
We need to vote. And we'll all vote on this. Ginny?
I vote yes.
Lee?
I vote yes.
Paul?
All vote yes.
Yes.
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. So Sarah, what is the official time for the end of the regular meeting?
4:56 PM.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break.